Well, hello again. Time for The Longest Day, Book versus Movie, Part 2, The Night. Well, we'll continue following the movie, but trying to correlate our two timelines is going to be quite a chore. The movie starts with the British glider forces approaching and landing at Pegasus Bridge, which is 5 pages into Chapter 1. The actual beginning of the chapter doesn't occur in the film for another 14 minutes. Now, there's a discrepancy about the bridge being mined. Preparations were installed, but the actual charges had not been placed.
Hello! Hello!
The book doesn't explicitly mention phone lines being dynamited, but we can be sure things like that were happening. General Pemsel's scene happened back in Chapter 12 of Part 1, as noted previously. Lieutenant Commander Vandervoort in the C-47 wasn't in the book.
North by east.
And for Dutch Schultz's scene, we need to go back to Chapter 13 of Part 1. And it's a bit different than shown. While waiting for the trucks to take the men to their aircraft, a crap game broke out, as they often did. A friend came up to Dutch and asked for a loan of $20, offering his graduation present Bulova watch as collateral. Feeling uneasy about it, Schultz gave the watch back, saying, well, according to Ryan at least, "Here, I don't need 2 of them." All Dutch had now was the rosary his mother had sent him. Pemsel again, but not for another 4 chapters in the book. Now, the scene is accurate in spirit, even if not verbatim. There's no scene in the book specifically showing the Rupert's invasion. Actually, they were rarely even mentioned, just occasional reports of dummy parachutists, or some such. But they were so famous that they just had to be included. Nope. Janine, her friend, whoever he was, French commandos, and railroad sabotage are not mentioned. But again, yes, stuff like that did happen. It just wasn't recorded here. Ah, some sort of Gummipuppen appearing.
Gummipuppen?
Now, there's a lack of information here. The movie seems to suggest that dropping Rupert's was a British tactic. But General Marks was in Saint-Lô, in the American sector. Now, in reality, they were used by both U.S. and British armies, though all mainly British. Now, finally, back to the beginning. Part 2, Chapter 1. Now, this is a very accurate recreation of what actually happened, missing only one small but somewhat important detail. Madame Angèle Levrault, the village schoolmistress, heading to the outhouse, was startled by a young man dropping from the sky. She came face to face with Private Robert M. Murphy of the 82nd Airborne's 505 Regiment. The private, later sergeant, Murphy had survived Normandy, the Bulge, and even law school. Now, eventually, he wrote a book about his D-Day experiences called No Better Place to Die, which I recommend highly. It contains not only Murphy's reminiscences, but those of one of the German soldiers who was on duty that night. as well as Mayor Alexandre Renaud and others, and lots of pictures. And yes, he did shush, Madame. There's an interesting footnote in this book about that meeting. Captain Doring's bit is okay, except he ran back inside and called headquarters. Then 9 pages of general paratrooper goings-on and some civilian reactions, closing out Chapter 1 with 2 Pathfinders being brought before General Reichert, not von Salmuth, saying,
Awfully sorry, old man. Simply landed here by accident.
To begin Chapter 2, we are transported to the middle of Chapter 4 and have our nationality changed. It's Captain Francis Sampson of the American 101 Division, Airborne, who lost and found his mass kit. Now, that's not to say a British chaplain couldn't also be in the same situation, but it's Sampson who's in the book. Pluskat and Acker seem to have read the book. They got this scene pretty much right, except Pluskat called Acker, and then Acker called back. It's General Mark's 53rd birthday. The party, such as it was shown back in Part 1. Chapter 3 consists mainly of British paratroopers going about British paratrooper business. And Pluskat goes to his main bunker but doesn't see anything. The film and Chapter 4 start off lined up. A building in San Mirclis is on fire. Father Roland brings Mayor Renaud into the church to hear Madame Levrault.
Tout d'un coup, je vois un homme qui tombe du ciel.
Un parachutiste.
Oui, c'est ça. On aurait dit comme un grand... Rien que chute.
Then a droning sound is heard. The ensuing disaster was enhanced for film, of course. But still, I should point out John Steele's foot was shot before he hit the church, and he only hung there for about 2 hours before being cut down and taken prisoner by the Germans. And although it was horrific, only about 20 to 30 men actually landed in town. This is at the end of the previous chapter.
Ich denke, ich bleibe eine Weile hier.
For God's sake, Padre, stop that damn noise.
I'm sorry, son. I'm afraid I'm lost.
Well, who ain't? Now, come.
This is true. And it's as good a time as any to mention the crickets. The movie has it pretty close. 1 click answered by 2, or the reverse also worked, 2 clicks answered by 1. The 82nd also required a password. Now at this point, that was flash to be answered by thunder. Our old friend Dutch Schultz actually was picked up by his own unit after one of those cricket episodes. The group did pass a group of Germans, as shown in the film.
2 clicks. 2 clicks.
Nope, never did. Like I said, this isn't right. But this is. No Pluskat at this time, but stay tuned.
In Richtung Caen. Ja.
The first mention of Lieutenant Colonel Benjamin Vandervoort in the book. A 1-page scene stretched out to over 2 minutes. Of course, it takes about 2 minutes to read a page out loud, so yeah, we'll call this a draw.
Die Invasion.
Chapter 5 is almost all about the generals in France and Germany calling each other and voicing their opinions and nobody knowing what was going on for sure. Now, none of these film bits are precisely from the book, but they all convey the overall attitude.
Nein, ich bin nicht der Meinung. Im Gegenteil. Meine Schlussfolgerung, die Normandie ist nur das Ziel einer Ablenkungsoffensive. Ablenkungsoffensive. Das ist nicht der Hauptstoß. Der kommt hier, beim Pas-de-Calais.
Then another 2 pages of Priller berating the Luftwaffe leadership. No commandos yet. Lovett and company don't show up until they hit the beach in part 3. I don't understand where those French guys are from. They have their own commando unit.
Bonne chance. Demain matin, on les aura.
Priller has another argument with headquarters, but in print only. And Barton and Roosevelt are in the movie only. But the situation seems to be accurate. In fact, Barton is barely mentioned in the book, and only after the 4th Division had landed and was heading inland. And in a scene worthy of the film, but omitted, Barton and Roosevelt were directing traffic. There was also no French commando briefing in the book at this point. 100 pages earlier, one paragraph described Kiefer and Sergeant de Montler looking over a model of the town. Chapter 6 concerned itself with the activities of the airborne divisions now that they've landed. And Chapter 7 is more of the cinematically neglected midget submarines. And 8 is again German generals scurrying about like headless chickens.
War bis 4 Uhr auf, dann hat ein Schlafmittel genommen und sich zurückgezogen.
Blumentritt's phone call was actually a teletype, and Jodl himself was still asleep as well.
Jodl hat abgelehnt. Der Führer darf nicht geweckt werden. Jetzt möchte ich wirklich wissen, auf welcher Seite der liebe Gott steht.
I say sometimes I wonder which side God's on.
In meinem Zimmer ist noch eine ausgezeichnete Flasche Cognac. Napoleon, ungeöffnet. Zwar nicht ganz die Gelegenheit, an die ich gedacht habe, aber trotzdem. Kurz, hol sie.
That's right, Gunther. When all else fails, call for the brandy. And last, but not least, Major Pluscott informs his superiors the Armada is heading
Auf mich zu, direkt!
Well, that's 2 down. And again, we've been able to tie appropriate points of the book and the movie together. There's not much more to say except the usual check back in a couple of weeks when we will be proceeding to Part 3, The Day, which will be concerned with, well, the day. From the first landings to the tentative movements off the beaches. You know, just once I'd like to see a movie that was actually a faithful reproduction of the book, rather than a rather free-handed adaptation. But then it would probably be as boring as all get out. Oh well. In the meantime, check out some of my other videos and playlists. You might find something interesting. Thanks for watching. Do the comment, like, subscribe routine if you want. Better yet, buy me a coffee. It's much more helpful. Till next time.